asked 9 of the top AI models in the world a simple question. How many days are there between two dates? No calculus, no quantum physics, just counting days on a calendar. The best model got 100%, the worst 11%. And some of the most expensive models weren't even close to the top. If you're using AI in your business or thinking about it, there are 3 very common mistakes that I see over and over again. And today we're going to talk through all 3, why they happen, and how to fix them. I'm Neil Malan, and in these videos we cut through the noise and figure out what actually works with AI. Let's start with the big one. People ask AI to do math. And I don't mean complex stuff, I mean basic math. Date calculations, percentages, plus, minus, multiplication. The kind of thing a calculator does perfectly every single time. To show you what I mean, I ran an experiment. I took 9 of the top large language models available right now, and I gave each of them 100 date calculations to do. Simple ones. How many days between the 1st of March and the 15th of June, as an example. Here are the results. Now let's unpack this a little. Gemini 3.1 Pro got 100%. That sounds great, until you realize that it's the only model that did, and it costs $2.50 for 100 questions. Simple date calculation questions. Claude Opus got 97%, Grok 98%. Those are very good, but they're not perfect. And when we're talking about counting days, that's not a very hard problem for a computer to do. Now look at the bottom of the table. DeepSeek got 51%, and Claude Haiku, the fastest and cheapest of the bunch, got only 11%. The problem with this approach is that you're asking questions and you're getting results that you never know whether or not you can trust. So here's the thing. Large language models are not calculators. It was never designed to be one. It's a language model. It predicts the most likely next word in a sequence. When you ask it to count the days between two dates, it's not actually counting, it's pattern matching. Against similar questions, it saw during its training and generating what looks like a plausible answer. I saw with some of the experiments through the reasoning models that they actually take reasonable steps to try and calculate the results using reasoning steps, counting the years to figure out was this a leap year or not, looking at the months, were these 30-day months or 31-day months, etc., and breaking it down step by step to try and get to an answer. But even with those approaches, they still were not foolproof and extremely inefficient and slow in answering those questions. Sometimes the pattern matching does get the answer right, often, as you can see in some of these results, but often isn't good enough if you're expecting the process that's relying on this LLM to be an integral part of a workflow to be accurate. If you're doing financial calculations, project timelines, invoicing, making decisions on whether or not a refund is still within the refund window, or whether or not a passenger on an airplane is allowed to make a booking change on their seat within a certain amount of allotted time given the policy of the company. All of those things you would get right most of the time, but not all of the time, which isn't good enough. So the fix is actually pretty simple. Give the model a tool. Every major AI platform now supports what's called tool use or function calling. That means the model can recognize when it's being asked a math question, like in this case, and call out the actual calculator or code interpreter to do the real calculation, as opposed to trying to pattern match and reason its way through the problem. Claude, ChatGPT, and Gemini all have this built in now. When you use the standard chat interface, they will often use something like code interpreter, depending on the type of package that you're on and the settings that you're in. So it is important to check these kinds of calculations instead of trusting the results blindly. But if you're building with the API or using a workflow tool, you need to make sure that these tools are enabled and are made available to the language models to consume. Because without them, you're asking a language model to do a calculator's job, and it's going to give you poor results. The rule of thumb is this: if the answer needs to be exactly right, not approximately right, not usually right, not almost right, but exactly right, don't let the model guess. Give it a tool to be able to calculate the answer. The second mistake is closely related to the first. People ask AI factual questions and trust the answer without realizing the model might just be making it up. And with that, I don't mean that it's obviously wrong answers. They seem extremely confident, well-structured, completely plausible answers, and they might also have been correct at some previous point in time when the model was trained. The industry calls this hallucinations, but I think that understates the problem. It's more like a confabulation. The model fills in the gaps with something that sounds right, and it makes it difficult to spot. And that's about it. You ask, what's the current exchange rate between the rand and the pound? And what was your company's revenue last year? Well, what does the GDPR regulations state in terms of the following use case? Who's the current mayor of a city? The model will give you an answer, a confident one. But unless it has access to real-time information, it's drawing on its training data that could be months or even years out of date. And for questions as simple as those, it generates something that's plausible rather than saying, I don't know. In this case, I ran another experiment. I chose 5 questions, which I gave to 5 different large language models. The first one was, what is the current iPhone being sold? The second question was, what is the current repo interest rate in South Africa? Third one was, why is the oil price so high? Fourth one was, what is the current World Health Organization guidance or approach to the treatment of obesity? And the last one was, who is the largest pure electric vehicle manufacturer in the world? Now, out of those 5 questions across the 5 models, which gives you 25 potential outcomes, only 1 correct answer was provided. The other 24 were all incorrect. iPhone question was a mixture between iPhone 15 and 16. The repo rate was across the board, but completely wrong. The oil price, it gave very generic answers about supply chain constrictions and geopolitical risk and all of those things, but very much generic as opposed to being on the point about what is currently happening in the world, etc. In order to test the model's ability to answer general knowledge questions, I opted to use OpenRouter. OpenRouter is a platform that allows you to easily consume multiple models without having to change the code or the API calls and just switching the model name that you pass into your API calls. It also has this convenient playground where you can select multiple models, and the message that you then submit will be submitted to all of the models at once, and you can see their responses. So let's take one of the example questions. What is the WHO general guidance on treating obesity? So I'm sending it to 5 different models, and all 5 of them are being asked the same question at once. So if we go to the first one, GPT 5.4 says lifestyle changes, individualized treatment, etc. If we go to Gemini 3.1, it says similar thing, life course approach. If we go to Sonnet, individualized to patient, multidisciplinary, non-stigmatized, managing energy intake, sugar, etc. Physical activity, so lifestyle as well. Gemini 2.5 Pro says it's a complex disease, person-centered, health outcomes, weight, treatment pathway, nutrition, physical activity, behavioral. So again, mostly focused on lifestyle changes, and then Kimi 2.5, nutrition, physical activity, behavioral changes. So that's the consensus across all of the models. If you just ask the question, what's the WHO guidance on treatment of obesity? That's what they will say. It's asked the same question, but we enable search. So it's now allowed to use a tool to go out to the internet and search for more recent and more relevant information. Just for reference, I've set the settings to only send the last message to the model, so the models don't have visibility of the previous questions that were asked of them. So now it will again go to all the models, but they do have the ability to search the internet. And there we go. Immediately you can see 2 layers, chronic care management of obesity, but also GLP-1 medications. If we go to Gemini 3.1, same thing. Immediately, glucagon-like peptide-1 GLP-1 is right at the top of the list. Sonnet 4.6, this one is sticking to chronic, lifelong, multidisciplinary approach. It does include now a fourth option, a pharmacological update, specifically referring to GLP-1s. So it's included in the answer, but it's not a primary approach. So by enabling a tool, we went from 5 out of 5 giving reasonable answers, but not factually correct as to what the latest guidance is from the WHO in terms of the treatment of obesity. So the problem here is the same root cause as we have with the math one. The model isn't looking things up, it's generating text that is statistically likely to follow your question. If a question looks like the kind that has a specific factual answer, the model will produce something that looks like a specifically factual answer that matches your question, whether it's correct or not. The fix for this is again the use of tools. Specifically, either the search tool, which gives the model the ability to go and search the internet for an answer, or if the question that you're asking is a more elaborate one and requires a lot more thinking and many sources in order to answer, the use of the deep research capability, which is also built into most of the tools like Claude, ChatGPT, and Gemini. If you've never used the deep research capability before, I strongly recommend it. You'll find that the quality and accuracy of results that you get and the breadth of information included and the references supplied is much, much higher than what you'll get if you're using the pure question and answer mode inside of ChatGPT or Gemini or Claude. I have to caveat what I've explained above, that the user interfaces are becoming more and more intelligent, and specifically Claude, I've noticed, and ChatGPT have started including the ability to notice when what you're asking of them is something that might not be in the model's training data or it is factual in nature, and it will then auto trigger the search capability in order to answer the question, removing the inadvertently having a hallucinated answer and trusting that hallucinated answer. That being said, it is still important to check the results coming back, the references being provided as part of that result, which is usually provided if it's used a search tool, and checking whether or not that reference is accurate and does represent the answer that you've been given. The bottom line is, if accuracy matters, don't rely on the model's memory. Give it access to search, or better yet, connect it to your actual data sources. Again, all of the platforms that are commonly used have the ability to also connect to your enterprise data. So you can connect it to a SharePoint or a Google OneDrive with company documentations inside, which it can also then go and search through in order to synthesize an answer with references back to your original documents. It doesn't have to just be information that is provided out on the internet. The third most common mistake is using AI when a spreadsheet would do. This is a different kind of mistake. It's not about using AI wrong, it's about using AI when you shouldn't be using it at all. I see this constantly. Someone takes a list of data, sales figures, customer records, inventory, pastes it into ChatGPT and asks it to do calculations of totals, find duplicates, sort by region, draw up all kinds of analytics. But what you've just taken is a deterministic problem where there is an exactly one right answer every time and handed it to a probabilistic system that might get it wrong. Again, as with the previous example, a lot of the interfaces have started adding in the ability to determine when you are asking such a kind of a question, and it will then revert to using Python code or some other more deterministic method to try and answer the question for you, as opposed to just using the language model. But it is important to be aware of what is happening when you ask these questions, and if it is in fact using that kind of a mechanism. Something like Claude Cowork is a lot more active in making sure that it uses these other kinds of tools in order to answer the question in a deterministic fashion. Meanwhile, Excel is sitting right there. It's been solving the exact type of problem for 40 years. A VLOOKUP doesn't hallucinate. A sum formula doesn't give you an approximate answer. A pivot table doesn't skip rows because it ran out of context window. If your task is structured, if it's repeatable, if the logic can be expressed as a formula or a rule, that's not an AI problem. That's a spreadsheet problem, or a database problem, or a simple automation. And using the right tool means you get the result that's 100% correct every time, instantly, and essentially for free. One additional piece of information to include here is that all of the top vendors have started including the ability to use the language model within Excel, which is a completely different approach to what I initially described in this problem area. If you're using Claude for Excel, ChatGPT for Excel, the new Gemini capability in Google Sheets, and at some level Microsoft Copilot inside of Excel, you're using the large language model within the harness or guardrails of Excel, where it helps you to build the formulas and structure that you otherwise would have had to build manually. But the calculations themselves are still done inside of Excel, which gives you the repeatable and deterministic results. But the real world isn't always this clean. Sometimes you have a spreadsheet full of structured data, but one column is messy. Customer feedback is free text. Product descriptions that need rewriting. Addresses that need classifying by region. The structured part is a spreadsheet problem. The unstructured part is an AI problem. And that's where the hybrid tools also come in. There are also functions being built into Excel where you can call a LLM within a cell to try and generate an output inside of the cell using the power of a large language model, specifically in some of these examples I've just mentioned, like taking a piece of customer feedback text that is free text and asking an LLM to help classify it as positive, neutral, or negative, which will then give you one of three values inside of an Excel cell that you can use for the rest of your spreadsheet in a deterministic fashion. You might have a column of customer complaints and next to it a formula that calls Claude to classify each one as billing, delivery, or product quality. That classification is AI. Everything else, the counting, the sorting, the reporting, is plain old Excel. Best of both worlds. In the first video in the series, I mentioned decision frameworks. Here's a simple one. When you're looking at a task, ask yourself 3 questions. Is the task structured and rule-based? If so, use a traditional tool, spreadsheet, database, script. Does the task require understanding language, context, or ambiguity? If so, use AI. Is it a mix of both? Then use a hybrid. Keep the structure, add AI where you need it. And that's it. It's not complicated, but it saves you from a trap of reaching for AI just because it's new and exciting, where a simpler tool would do a better job. So 3 mistakes. Don't ask AI to do math without giving it a calculator. Don't ask it to recall facts without giving it a search capability. And don't use it for problems that a spreadsheet already solves perfectly, unless you're combining the two. The thread that runs through all 3 of these are the same. Know what the tool is actually good at and set it up to succeed. AI is incredibly powerful, but it's powerful in specific ways. And the people who get the most out of it are the ones who understand where it shines and where it doesn't. That's it for this one. I hope you found it useful. I'm Neil Malan, and thanks for watching.